Oh, well, good afternoon. Yeah, I can take a day of rest, and I will be taking a rest later on today and this evening. But thanks for joining us, Jazz. Jazz, nice. Um, where do you start with this question? I would have to start first of all. Quite definitely, the answer to my question, I believe, is yes. I think that the quality of the reporting left quite a bit to be desired back in 05, 06, 07 when Steve was a suspect, then arrested. The court, the trial, everything about it is, from a journalistic point of view, I think is a mess. Where to start? The most obvious place to start would, of course, be here. Does anybody know who this guy is? So this is Jeremy Thompson, and he's retired now, but he was a news reporter with Sky News. And in 2002, I'll just make sure everything's working okay. In 2002, he did an iconic interview. Hi, Jazz, JD, Jennifer. I don't recall. Hi. So yeah, this is Jeremy Thompson, a Sky News reporter who in 2002 had an iconic interview with this girl, Maxine Carr. What am I on about? Obviously, the Soham murders. Jeremy Thompson interviewed Maxine Carr. Jeremy interviewed Maxine. I'm going to send this to some of the journalists in Wisconsin so that they can understand. Interviewed Maxine Carr, and let's find what it was that she said. I've got it here. So this was what Maxine Carr said to Jeremy Thompson, speaking to a TV reporter. That's Jeremy Thompson. I'll repeat it for you Wisconsin journalists so that you understand what the dickens I am saying. Speaking to a Sky TV reporter, Carr says, no one believes they would ever run away. This is referring to Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. They were very close to their families. They were. Now, we got to remember, at the moment, Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman are only missing people. Similarly to when Mike Holbach talked to the press when Teresa Holbach had only been reported missing one day. They were very close to the family. This is something that I will keep for the rest of my life. It was a card that one of the girls had given her, that Holly. It's what Holly gave me on the last day of term. And there's a poem written inside saying to a special teaching assistant and that we will miss her because she wasn't carrying on in that job. She wasn't being kept on in her job, and we will see her in the future. That was the kind of girl she was. She was just really lovely. Almost instantly, Carr's mistake was spotted. She had referred to Holly in the past tense with the word were and was. Yeah, one of the big bugbears for me. When I was a mechanic at the garage here in town, you had some of these other garages opening up, your typical fast fit garages. What you get at the fast fit garages are people who are not fully trained up as mechanics. They are fitters. Mechanics are trained to be mechanics. They're trained to take that alternator apart, to take parts of the engine apart, and to actually repair something that doesn't need simply replaced. That's just a part of it. Nowadays, of course, you get a lot of fitters, not too many mechanics. I think one of the problems is the same in Wisconsin, certainly at the time of Teresa going missing. You've got reporters, but you've not got investigative journalists, proper journalists that look at the case and realize things are wrong. I think we've got reporters in Wisconsin that are quite happy to simply report whatever the state narrative needs to be. They have no hesitation in presenting whatever the state says. Of course, back in 2016, late 2015, but early 16, we had an excellent journalist in Wisconsin by the name of John Ferak. No heavy-duty guilter. That is complete and utter nonsense. He's hiding. This whole idea that he was simply nervous is just baloney. Absolute baloney. Absolute rubbish. The last people, let's make this clear. And I'll make it clear later on as well. Let's make this clear. The last people who would ever accept that somebody has met their demise would be family members. They are the last ones. The fact that he uses the term the guilty, that the grieving process could take days. Now you explain that one to me. How could it take days to get over the death of his sister, who is not even reported dead yet? She's only a missing person. But let me show you something later on, okay? Let me show you something later on. Because that really is heavy-duty guilter. You are talking utter BS. This guy needs to be investigated. He should have been investigated. Jeremy Thompson immediately, and his producers, went to the police in Soham and said, you need to watch this. This girl, Maxine Carr, has used the past tense to describe Holly Wells. That bust the case open. Yes, it was subconscious because, yes, he already knew what had happened to her. And this rubbish about he was a young man and not being used to being on TV. Well, then why not use the older brother who's an attorney? Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because Ken Kratz could tell him exactly what to say. Ken Kratz told him everything to say about, take for example, Emily Matasic says to Mike after he proudly on the steps says, you just want to pop this into your DVD player and there's the case. And even she says to him, have you seen it yet? What does Mike say? No. But I tell you what, I bet you a bottom dollar that Ken Kratz told him to say that. To say, if you get asked about it, just say, here's your case. He hadn't even watched it. Think about it, right? Think about this one. When on the sentencing for Brendan, if Mike Holbach really thinks that Brendan Dassey did what Brendan Dassey was coerced to say, why would he be wanting Brendan to take a plea deal? If that was my sister that had been murdered and I thought Brendan Dassey had done it, there's no way anybody here would be wanting Brendan to take a plea deal so that it benefits him in getting out early. I want to see him rot in hell. For goodness sake. You know, if you're going to come on here, at least have something sensible to say. I don't care if he had a speech impediment. We all have speech impediments at times. It doesn't matter. That is just bullshit, and you know it. No, no, no. You are not getting away with this rubbish. Mike knew what he was saying when he said the grieving process. He should be, him and his family members should be the last ones to accept anything that happened. But to explain how he came up with the grieving process could take days. Now, honestly, let me show you something later on. So, John Frack, as I say, he's somebody who knows exactly what's going on. He is the one that did do the investigative journalism. He's the one that we need to look at. Right, victim, or whatever you call yourself, I've had enough of you. You're getting kicked out. This is just ridiculous. Right. That's it. Okay. Dealt with. We're not putting up with that bullshit. Never ever putting up with that crap. Here we go. Picture. Kratz, Emily. What's that guy's name again? Is it Kircher? Is that not Colette Henry? Don't know who that is. As John Farrak put out here, you know, a genuine bond is here. It shows. Just look at all their faces. Am I right? Of course you're right. So, let's go. This was a message that I sent to John Frack, where I said, you know, I couldn't believe how poor some of the journalists covering the case are. Let's just bring that down. I couldn't believe how poor they are. Sent him that tweet that he done. His reply, exactly. I once heard that one of the reporters in Appleton who covered the Halbach trial used to golf regularly with Kratz. A personal friend. Yeah. That's what we're up against with Wisconsin. Certainly with that area. Okay. I say let's just remind ourselves exactly what Mike Halbach said. He's asked, how are you holding up, Mike Halbach? I mean, the grieving process, you know, could last days, could last weeks, could last years. You know, hopefully we find answers as soon as possible so we can, you know, begin to hopefully, you know, move on. Hopefully with Teresa still in our life. He realizes at the last moment how he slipped up. Done that one. Done that one. Most of them are done. So I think we can start looking at some of the articles that I've got here. Yes, let's have a look at Emily Matesic. Let's add that back in again. Let's do that. There's something here I wanted to share with you. It's here. Yes, here we go. As some of you know, I did reach out to Emily Matasic because she wrote to me almost a year ago. Paul, thanks for reaching out. I know you're looking for an in-depth response to all of your questions. Well, the main question was simply, did any journalist ever take the time to actually examine what Mike had just said? Did anybody do a Jeremy Thompson? That's really all I was asking. Did anybody in Manitou, did any of the journalists ever think for one moment, hold on a sec, what he's just said is so suspicious? So, no, I wasn't really asking for much. I was just asking, Emily, for your opinion as to what the dickens did Mike Holbach mean by that. But what you're asking for happened nearly 15 years ago. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what somebody said or what questions were asked more than a decade ago. I've covered thousands of stories since then, and there is no way for me to remember every single specific detail from all of those stories. I am just going to let my reporting speak for me. Well, Emily, I can assure you, I've never yet seen any article by you where you talk about Mike's grieving process and questioning it. But isn't that interesting? The one thing I did find about Emily Matasic, let's pop this up. You type up Emily Matasic, find out how unimportant. Let's find out how unimportant. Let's see how unimportant making a murder is to you then, that you can't remember anything because you've covered so much more. You've even got an article about the fact that you're featured in the Netflix match Making a Murderer. As much investigative journalism where you actually ask awkward questions of either Mike or Ken Kratz. And the best for me was this is a quote from Emily Matasic. We'll have a look at the whole article in a minute. But here it is. I can't believe it's been 10 years, she says. This, as in Making a Murder, this case is probably the biggest story that I've ever covered in 15 years since graduating and working as a reporter. And she can't remember anything. She can't tell me anything about what happened. And yet it's the biggest case in 15 years career. I think the word is disingenuosity. Okay. So have a look at another one. Let's do this. Let's read some of this nonsense. Avery Uncut. Part 2. This is NBC doing a right guilter job on Stephen Brendan. (2016) February 9th. It's been over 10 years since the Teresa Halbach murder case captivated our community. Now millions of Americans have been watching on Netflix, becoming amateur sleuths in the process. After pouring through hundreds of hours of NBC 26's unseen video, we focus on the evidence left out of the documentary. The Netflix documentary has polarized viewers and prompted thousands to sign petitions to free Stephen Avery. It's also frustrated others who lived through the trial, like former reporter Diana. Is it Elva or Elvia? I think they've got the name wrong there. Elvia, I'm sure it is. She put, I wanted to throw my remote control because they were telling a story that was not the story that we got in and day out, she said. Well, that's because you got it from Kratz. While some can't stop watching, the documentary has been criticised for being one-sided and leaving out important parts of the case. I fervently believe that Netflix has an obligation at this point to fix what they said. Disgraced former district attorney, disgraced because of his sexting scandal, Ken Kratz, who it was the former disgraced special prosecutor in the case. Why, oh why, would you quote a disgraced, unethical prosecutor? Why would you do that, NBC? To fix the one-sidedness of this, whether it's changing the name of the piece, or perhaps better, giving the other side an opportunity to present that information, which was excluded from the Netflix piece. Kratz believes significant evidence was left out or not explained, including the bullet fragments found in the garage. If you have a bullet that's fired from Stephen Avery's gun, and let's come on down so that we can see it in its full glory. If you have a bullet that's fired from Stephen Avery's gun, it's not Stephen Avery's gun, it's Rolly Johnson's, and that bullet, we know sometime before the 5th of November, passed through the body of the victim, Teresa Halbach, then there was an excellent chance that we knew exactly not only who killed her, but how she was killed. Now, first of all, notice he's changed it from the bullet going through the head to going through the body. Now then, we've all watched and listened. How many times did anybody ever present any evidence that a bullet had ever gone through anything other than Teresa's skull? Exactly. However, not much focus was put on the bullet in the series. Are you kidding me? We are now 5 years later, and we've discovered exactly the frame up of these two guys. Well, the bullet was in itself one of the most, if not the most important pieces of forensic evidence in this case. You're right there, Kratz. You're absolutely right. It is a huge piece of forensic evidence because it completely destroys your story. Another piece of evidence Kratz says was missing, that Avery specifically called Auto Trader magazine asking for Teresa. Footage from the trial. Kratz, the specific language the man used when requesting the photographer, Dawn Plitchka, Miss Obfuscation herself, Auto Trader magazine. He wanted a photographer that had been out there before. Well, of course, she'd been out 15 times. You know, Steve didn't even know what her name was. He was given her phone number by Auto Trader. Did he say why he wanted that same photographer as before? Yes, because she's the one that came the last time. Because she's the one that covers that area. Because he had a minivan for sale. Teresa Halbach didn't just happen on this property, said Kratz. Teresa Halbach was targeted by Stephen Avery. Remember that. Teresa had complained about Stephen answering the door with just a towel. Hold on a sec. We've got Jim Bray can tell Stephen is guilty by the look in his eye. Now Ken Kratz knows that he's guilty because he once answered the door with just a towel. That is so damning. That is really, really incriminating. My God, Ken, why did I not think of that? That is so incriminating. Kratz also says the series doesn't mention the fact that Avery made calls to Halbach that day using the 6-7 feature. Yeah, he says he phoned her later on in order to get her to come back and take a picture of the low loader. I think we've had enough of this drivel from Ken Kratz. Come on to that later. This is a piece by, as I say, it is Diana Alvia. And a lot of people can associate with this. In fact, her name was Teresa Halbach. Sharon Sunshine did a whole video about her and a series of videos, if I remember rightly, of other victims. What Netflix missed with Making a Murderer. I remember the early days of November 2005 vividly. How could I not? A young woman, just a few years younger than me, had disappeared. No, hold on a sec. Had disappeared. I, a young local TV reporter, was assigned to accompany one of the many groups of people that were putting up flyers with her face on it, asking for anyone who knew anything to come forward. Her name was Teresa Holbach. Just bear with me one moment. Let's just ask something of the boss. I'm going to leave it there for the time being. Come back to this because I've got to go and with the boss. So what I'll do is I'll continue with this next part of Her Name Was Teresa. But there was one bit that I need to load up for later. Mind I said I've got something I want to pop in here. Okay, I'm going to say cheerio. We'll catch you all later on this afternoon. It's 2:15 here, so probably when about 6 or just after my time, we'll carry on with the next part. Okay. Okay, we'll catch you soon. Bye for now.